The Healthcare Security Cast is sponsored by 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And by Genetec. Genetec, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit Genetec, that's GENETEC.com.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for Tuesday, July the 7th. On today's episode, we're joined by Ben Scaglione. Ben has 30 years of experience in healthcare security and is the author of Security Management for Healthcare. On this episode, we'll discuss where Ben sees the future of healthcare security moving to. And now, let's get into the show. Today, we're joined by Ben Scaglione. Ben, thanks for joining us today.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. Thanks so much for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Happy to have you on. Now, I do know you fairly well, but I'd like to give our audience a chance to know you. So I'm going to ask the question, who is Ben Scaglione?
So, Brian, I would say that I'm a 39-year experienced security professional working mostly in the healthcare field. I'm married. I've been married for 34 years to my wonderful wife. 3 kids, all grown. My youngest is still in college. He just ended his sophomore year, or is ending his sophomore year in the next week or so. My daughter, is out with her career, and my oldest son, of course, out on his own in his career. 3 wonderful kids, and I've enjoyed raising them and spending my life with them. I'm just a guy very passionate about healthcare security. Like I said, I've been involved in a very, very long time. Really love to be part of the industry.
Excellent. And being a 39-year veteran, could you walk us through your career and just kind of tell us what led to you being where you are today?
Sure. So out of college, I worked as a supervisor for Seton Hall University in New Jersey. A wonderful time there. Spent 2 or 3 years there before I left. Went to warehousing. From warehousing, did the guard industry for a little while, and then ended up as a investigator at Beth Israel Medical Center in New York. Ended up being promoted to supervisor, and then left there after 4 or 5 years. Went back into New Jersey. Worked for a small hospital, St. Mary's Medical Center, which ended up closing about a year and a half after I was there. I ran security, risk management, safety, and anything else they wanted to give me. It was an interesting experience closing a hospital. I ended up being the last one there, last manager there. I ran just about everything from housekeeping to dietary, dealt with all the problems that needed to be dealt with, had all the departments reporting to me until it closed. I left there and went to Bellevue Hospital. I was at Bellevue for 5 years, probably the best time of my career. I enjoyed Bellevue immensely. It was a wonderful place to work. Enjoyed the relationships there, the working with the staff and obviously the other people in the hospital. Left there, went back into New Jersey, worked for 2 hospitals there as security, safety, risk management. And again, anything else they wanted to give me. And then had the opportunity after conducting a risk assessment at what was then the New York Hospital, which is now New York Presbyterian, ended up staying there for 14 years. Again, love the challenge, love doing, working there. But after about 12 years, the person who hired me and who was my boss ended up passing from lung cancer. So it wasn't much fun staying there after that, and decided to move on. I've been bouncing around the past 8 years, which and I've enjoyed the bounce around. I worked for G4S as their subject matter expert in healthcare. Went to a consulting firm, Lowers and Associates, for 2 years. And now at my current job, which is DVS Security Solutions, I'm doing design and risk assessment work. I love working for the company, and it's nice to be in a situation to use all the knowledge and experience that I have developed over the years to help people, help other security directors and other hospitals improve their performance.
Excellent. And I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but just want to ask you, who are some of your mentors and what have you learned from them?
So I have to say, early in my career, my first job at Seton Hall University, my direct report was a man by the name of Tom Smith. He was a retired Army sergeant. He probably was the one that influenced me the most early in my career. He was a great man, great person, taught me a lot. We had a great working relationship, and not only taught me a lot about security, but also about just being a good manager and supervisor. His boss, which was Mike McMahon, who was the director of security, a guy who wanted to teach people how to be better at their jobs and teach them security. They were both absolutely wonderful people. I would say from there, probably my boss at New York Presbyterian was the other person that was really a great influence on me. I think when he hired me, he knew that I had to work on certain things and helped me improve again my career and my ability to do my job and really let me do my job. I did some great work at New York Presbyterian that I'm very proud of, and he certainly was part of that. And probably last, I would say my parents, mostly my mom, very encouraging. My mom, who's now 91, is still trying to get her doctorate. She was big on education, very bright lady, big on improving, constantly improving yourself and challenging yourself to do new things. So I think you put it all together. Those probably were my inspirations and my mentors throughout my career.
Great. Now, another thing I want to talk to you about in terms of leadership is your involvement with some of the industry associations, including IHSS. Would you mind discussing your experience with these associations and just kind of some of the roles that you fulfilled?
Sure. So I'm going to start off though, not with IHSS, but with ASIS International. So um, ASIS International, for those that don't know, have a group of councils, which are specialties within the security industry, and obviously one of them is healthcare. So I've been on that council for about 20 years, probably the longest out of any of the other things that I do, and got the opportunity to be the vice chair for 4 years and then the chair for 2 years. Actually, ended up being 3 years as part of the process. So after my 2 year term as chair, I worked with the new chair and helped him who really didn't need much help, but work through their first couple months. And still a member of that particular organization. And IHSS have been a member as well for a very, very long time. And I had the opportunity to spend 4 years on the board, 2 years as member at large, and 2 years as the secretary, and enjoyed it immensely.
The next thing I'd actually like to talk about is your book, Security Management for Healthcare, first edition. What was the catalyst behind this publication, and what was that process like developing this resource?
So, I mean, as you may be aware, and a lot of people are aware, I've spent a lot of time writing articles with a good friend of mine, Anthony Luizo, who I had a relationship when I was at Bellevue. He ran health and hospitals overall, or corporate security, and we've been friends ever since. So him and I have been writing articles for the journal, for the IHSS journal, for a long, long time. I thought about it and realized that we've done such good work together that I took my parts of those articles and decided to put them together. And obviously, it made up when it was all said and done, it made up a very small part of the book. I was hoping it would actually be more. But it took me about 5 years to put the book together. It was a lot of work in my spare time, a lot of weekends, a lot of nights. And once the draft was done, to find a publisher that would be willing to publish it, which I did. But I think once the publisher decided to publish the book, that was the hardest 6 months I think I've had in a long, long time. It was kind of like going through grad school again. There were a lot of revisions. There's a lot of questions, a lot of work, a lot of research I had to do, a lot of verification on resources and things like that. So it was a tough 6 months before it was published, but I'm happy with the results. I think the book turned out well. I encourage people to get it. I think it's a great resource. Again, it's really it's really a culmination of my years of experience and the things I did throughout my career.
So you touched a little bit on the process and just finding a publisher and things of that nature. What were some of the challenges that were involved, and what did you learn during this process?
So I think the challenges were really spending the time or finding the time to really sit down and do this. And it's a lot of rewrite, a lot of going over it over and over again, and realizing that no matter how many times you go over it, you finally have to say stop and move on. You've done the best you can, and there's always room for improvement. But I think that was the biggest challenge during those 5 years of really finding the time, focusing on it, writing and rewriting and getting it all going. What I think I learned a lot, and certainly learned a lot about what I do. It's great to be able to review or go over some of the basics every once in a while to remember those things and that you did in your career, or just remember the basics in healthcare security, and to remind you that when you're a practitioner, that those are the basic things you need to focus on, or those are the best things to focus on. So I think it's really what I learned. I also learned that it's a tough process to publish a book. It's not that easy, and I don't know that I could do it again, but it's a great journey.
Excellent. Now, all of that being said, what we're going to be focusing on today is the future of healthcare security. Now, what made this a topic that's been so important to you? I know it's something that you've written on in the past, but what about it has really captivated your interest?
Well, I kind of always been that kind of person. I'm big on technology. I like to see what's new when it comes to technology and stay up to date. I like how to understand how security systems work and physical security work. So that's always been a big interest of mine. And part of that process is really understanding what's coming next, because technology just changes so dramatically, especially over the past, you know, 20 or 30 years. Technology has just been taking major leaps. And I think that's kind of what pushed me to really focus on the future of healthcare. I like looking forward. I like to see where things are going, and anticipate what's going to be happening, especially when you anticipate and you're correct. It's a good feeling. But I always like to look forward, and I always did that in my job, and I think it helped me do my job better, because I was able to constantly focus on the future, and redirect my department, and always had a always had the horizon to look at. Right, I was always focused on the horizon, and what's coming next.
Now, that being said, you've obviously spent a good amount of time in this field. How has the healthcare security industry evolved over your career?
Wow, I think it's evolved a lot. When I first got involved, it was very much a paper document industry, where it was no different than any other security industry. I think it's evolved to become a specialty, certainly necessary specialty, and we've done some really good things. We've advanced in training, we've advanced in technology, and I think we've become more of a professional group of individuals, as opposed to the retired police officer, or retired law enforcement officer, or a person who worked his way up through the ranks, who really wasn't seen as a major part of the healthcare environment. And I think the biggest leap is going to be what we're going through right now with COVID-19. I think a lot of hospitals are seeing the importance of being able to secure the facility, and the importance of having security officers on the front lines to help get through this process. So I think it's evolved a great deal. I think it's got a long way to go. I think IHSS has done a great job of promoting itself, and the organization, and the profession rather. And I think the guidelines and the other things we've done has really moved us forward, and I think it's great. And like I said, we still have some ways to go, but I think we're in the right direction.
Right now, in terms of future, I want to rely on your subject matter expertise a little bit. I just want to. I'm just curious. You've touched on this a little bit as well as technology. Where do you see technology going in the future?
Well, I think technology is going to help healthcare security a great deal in the future. And I think, again, with the current pandemic, I think a lot of things are going to change. And unfortunately, I think a lot of hospitals are not going to have the money. So expanding labor is going to be difficult. I think technology is going to be the solution to providing additional security services in the future. Right now, a lot of people are asking, and my company has been spending a lot of time researching thermal cameras and the ability to help that or use that as a tool to provide access control. I know in healthcare security that's going to be a big deal going forward as well. But I think technology is going to be a major part, and I think we need to get up to date. I think as a security director, we need to be more involved in the IT process. Certainly not take it over. I think it's a specialty that of its own, but I think we need a better understanding of how the networks work and how secure the networks are, so that the security systems don't go down or get compromised in any way.
Now, you spoke a little bit about the thermal technology there. Aside from that, are there any other technologies that really stand out as something that you see progressing in the industry in the next few years?
I think metal detection is coming a long way. There's a couple new products out that I think have some promise. I also think, obviously, the CCTV market and the way the analytics and AI have been promoted and are working. I think we have a long way to go, but I think as time goes on, some of the things that are out there are going to become more effective, and their ability to do what they say they can do is going to stand out. And I think we'll see a lot more in that direction. But I think CCTV is the way to go, and I think it's going to play a major role in technology for healthcare security.
All right, now, the next thing I'd actually like to discuss with you is just some of the budgetary concerns that we're facing right now. I've spoken to a lot of different security leaders, and obviously with COVID-19 happening right now, it's had a significant impact on a lot of folks. So I guess in the immediate future and in the I guess the distant future, what do you see happening with budgets for hospitals, especially as they pertain to security?
Yeah, so I think you're right. From some of the people I've spoken to and some of the things I've been reading, I think once COVID-19 has resolved itself, we're gonna hospitals are gonna be financially strapped. Hopefully, I know a lot of states have reopened and are allowing some hospital services to restart up, like same day surgery and those types of things. And I think that's certainly going to help. But I think this 2 or 3 month period has put a lot of strain on hospitals financially. And I think it's obviously going to affect healthcare security. I think we're going to see some major changes. Again, from the FTE perspective, at least for a while, I think those numbers are going to go down. I think, as a security professional, you're going to have to find more innovative and creative ways to provide services, especially since there's a big discussion about a second wave and how that may affect. What we experienced the past 2 months may happen again next year, and we'll be in the same boat. And hospitals just need to be better prepared.
Excellent. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is something that's been I guess, a hot button topic for our industry for a long time, and that's workplace violence prevention.
Yeah.
What changes do you see coming in the future, and how do you think that's going to impact our industry?
Well, I think I notice a lot of people are trying to keep it at the forefront. There's been a lot of stuff on LinkedIn and a lot of stuff I've been seeing about it, and I think that's great and it should continue. But I don't think that's the focus right now. Unfortunately, I know there's been a lot of discussion about domestic violence, certainly increasing and spilling out into the hospital environment, and I'm sure that's going to continue. And obviously, there's going to be a big issue with mental health over the next 6 to 8 months, maybe longer, depending on how long COVID-19 is around. I think it's something we really need to focus on when the dust settles. I think we're going to have no choice between the mental health issues, domestic violence issues, and people being in their homes and now coming out. I think crime's going to go up, and I think workplace violence is just going to be a natural extension of us getting back to normal. I think it's something healthcare really needs to focus on. when they get an opportunity, and really start developing some programs. I think there's for a lot of hospitals, they've been really working hard on it and have come up with some great programs to help reduce it. And I think those programs just need to be expanded to everyone else. And hopefully in the future, every hospital will have some sort of definitive plan in place to deal with it. Again, that's something that they either need to reach out for, or something they really need to spend time working on. Again, it may be the security director that pushes it. Um, as I said before, their role may be changing as well, and maybe may be the ones in the forefront to help champion that cause if they're not already.
Excellent. And another thing too, I'd actually like to discuss with you is you kind of alluded to this with your experience working in a hospital where, it seemed like you were running just multiple areas, multiple departments, and just had an increasing responsibility. The thing I want to talk about next is emergency preparedness. Now, we've seen a trend of security leaders being responsible for emergency preparedness in the past few years. How do you see that impacting the future of healthcare security?
Yeah, I think it's gonna, obviously there's a lot of security directors out there that are doing an absolutely outstanding job with emergency preparedness. But those people I talk to said they spend a lot of time, and I'm sure now they're overwhelmed trying to do both. And I think what the future holds is that's going to be a whole separate group of one individual or a small group of individuals that are going to be spearheading that particular thing. And I think COVID-19 is a primary reason why. And I think in the hospitals, in the South that have been dealing with tornadoes and hurricanes and everything else, and out west with earthquakes, I think a lot of those hospitals have a separate group that takes care of emergency management. I think that's where it's going to end up going. It may report into security, but I think you need to have a group of people that are just dedicated to making sure policies and procedures are up to date, making sure now that, and I'm sure there's going to be, again, a lot of changes, regulatory changes involved in emergency preparedness for healthcare. And I think it's going to be a lot of supply chain. It's going to be a lot of up and running and surge and those types of things that we're experiencing, that we're going to need to have people who are experts in that, or know that process better, so that we're more prepared in the future, or more prepared for next year when it comes to a pandemic.
Excellent. And I guess the last topic that I want to talk to you about with regards to the future of healthcare security is terrorism prevention. Where do you see that? Where do you see the future of security impacting that area?
I think that it's something that has been mentioned as a result of COVID-19, and the idea that terrorists, especially when it comes to IT, are really going to try to hit us while we're down, so to speak. So I think there needs to be some renewed discussion, certainly a renewed look at terrorist prevention in healthcare. But I think that's going to be part of this whole process, once the dust settles from the pandemic, to really figure out how hospitals should operate. Again, I think access control is going to be more important than it ever was before. I think continued training and testing and exercises in response to not only terrorism but other types of emergencies is going to be the primary focus for healthcare, and I'm sure security is going to play a major role in that. And again, I think it's just something that's worth taking a look at when the dust settles, to make sure that all the policies and procedures are up to date and in place for the terrorist response.
We've discussed 5 areas now of the healthcare security industry, and where you see the future of those going. What are some of the preparations that security leaders can make for these advances and these changes?
I think that we spend a lot of time as security professionals dealing with a lot of different situations. I think before COVID-19, when the economy was doing well, I think healthcare financially was doing okay. I think there were pockets where there were financial issues, but overall, I think the healthcare industry financially was doing well. I know a lot of security directors were buying new technology. Some of them were even expanding their departments. And I think that when the dust settles here, I think it's really a rebuild, or a reboot. and it's really taking a serious look at the processes in place and deciding what's going to work best, how you're going to respond to these types of situations. Because my sense is that this isn't over, or it could happen again, or we're going to have other emergent situations occurring over the next decade or so that we need to be better prepared for. And I think that's what we need to be doing. I think that I had mentioned on a recent webinar that I did that it's important more than ever to talk to your peers and really go to association meetings and go to conferences to really learn as much as you can and see what other people are doing and how they're doing it. Work together if you're part of a hospital system to see what everybody's doing at the different hospitals, and come up with a plan that's going to work best for everyone. And obviously, again, using expertise. There's a lot of experts out there. You've certainly spent time with some of them on your webcast, and that can help. Security directors. It's a different point of view. It's a different set of eyes, and certainly a different set of expertise that can help move that process along, and really take a hard look at the current processes and procedures that are in place in a particular security department.
Excellent. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, same question actually that I asked Tony York. Might not be a popular question because I know you put a lot of work into your book already, but is there a second edition in the plans?
Well, I think there would be, depending on how well it sells. I certainly, as anybody who writes, and as I said before, there are certainly things that could change and be updated in the book. Obviously, there was a lot of years that went by from start to finish. So, yeah, I would love to do a second edition and expand on what I started. Whether that'll happen or not, I'm not sure. But if the opportunity arises, I'm certainly going to give it a shot.
All right. And aside from that, what else can we expect from you in the future, Ben?
Well, yeah, thanks for asking that question. I'm happy with what I'm doing now, and hope to get out to more and more hospitals and be helpful to them in reassessing, or helping them move their security department along. So I'm hoping to continue to do that. I'm doing some local volunteer work. Restarted the North Jersey chapter of IHSS, and we're going to continue to work to see if we can get that going. There's some great security directors in northern New Jersey, hospital security directors in northern New Jersey. So we're hoping to get them together to work on a regular basis. And again, I think when COVID-19 kind of slows down, I think we're going to be in a better position to do that. So I'm going to continue that work as well. I know that the ASIS Healthcare Council is going to be doing a couple of different things that I hope to be involved in as well. But I think that's about it. I'm hoping that my company, again, we've started healthcare in Ross and Barzini just a short period of time, so we're hoping to expand that. Hoping that's going to be keeping me busy over the next couple of years.
Excellent. Now, is there anything else that I've yet to ask you about that you'd like to discuss further?
No, I think you've covered it. And again, thank you for inviting me to be part of your webcast. I would just like to say that you're doing a great job, and you've certainly helped this industry by giving experts like myself and other people who are major part of healthcare security the opportunity to talk and to be out there. And I know that your audience is growing on a regular basis, and I think that's great as well.
Well, thanks, Ben. I appreciate that. That does mean a lot. You have no idea how much that actually means hearing that. Now, in closing, what message do you have for the healthcare security cast community?
Well, the message is more or less timing. I know a lot of people are going through some very difficult situations with COVID-19, and I wish everyone the best. And my message would be stay safe, hang in there. Hopefully, the end is coming soon. And listen, don't give up on healthcare security just because you're going through a difficult period of time. I know going through 9/11 when I was at Presbyterian, it was a tough couple months after it happened, and part of my career that I'll never forget. But you know what? Things will always get better, and the future's always bright.
Excellent. The last thing I want to ask, Ben, is how can we connect with you?
So you can reach me on LinkedIn, under Ben or Bernard Scaglione. The other way would be to reach me on my work email, which is bscaglione@rossbar.com.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Ben, for taking the time. I do appreciate your time, and thanks for sharing with the whole healthcare security cast community.
And thank you again for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. Just want to remind you to follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. We have group pages and a company page on each site. You can also connect with the Healthcare Security Cast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Also, feel free to connect with me directly on any of these platforms. Again, that's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'll be the only Brian, that's BRINE Hamilton, on any one of these platforms. Also, for direct links to any of these platforms, you can visit my website, brianhamilton.com. Join us again later this week when our guest is leadership expert, Tony DeDante. Thank you again for joining the Healthcare Security Cast, and until next time, stay safe and take care.